Back here at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, where our red flag situation continues after a 15-car crash at the 12th lap of the scheduled 200, and we have been at a standstill since. And our focus of attention that originally started on just being able to identify the 15 cars and driver combinations that had been involved has now focused more on the well-being primarily of Dan Weldon. He was airlifted out of here to University Medical Center a while back. We have Jamie Little over at the hospital standing by for any updated information that she will be able to pass along to us. At this moment, there is a meeting going on between the drivers and IndyCar officials in the media center. And guys, this is just everybody's on pins and needles waiting.
You can tell by looking at all of the team members how everybody is focused. If everybody has one thing in their mind, they all want to know how Dan is. And racing really goes to the side, isn't it, right now? We're all just focused on that. I don't think any driver that is sitting on that pit wall right now with their cars ready to go is really thinking about the race until they know how Dan is.
Exactly, and we've all been in situations. I can think of Elkhart Lake back in the 90s when A.J. Foyt crashed, and Eddie, you were there. We sat there in the front stretch for a long period of time, and when they actually were taking care of the situation with A.J. Foyt in the early 90s, and in that scenario, you know, you were sitting in the car, you were waiting, and then when you are told it's time to go again, I'm not sure how we do it, but you put the visor down and you compartmentize what was going on. You go back and do your job, and then when you get out of the car, then you deal with it again. And I'm sure that's what's going to happen with the guys here today, Marty.
Well, there's Bev Patrick and T.J. Patrick talking there with a member of the Peak staff, and of course they're the parents of Danica Patrick. We saw her being emotional right before going into that meeting that the drivers are currently in, and of course there is her number 7. For Dan, his wife that we were told has been over at the hospital as well, wife Susie, and their baby boy Sebastian. There is the scene outside the meeting room where the drivers are conferring with IndyCar officials and waiting for that meeting to break up. For Dan, today is 134th career start, of course, a 2-time Indianapolis 500 winner, and really the win back in May set up this possibility as IndyCar head man Randy Bernard came up with the idea saying, hey, let's get a $5 million bonus. If Dan can start at the back of the field, come all the way through and win, half of it goes to Dan and half will go to a lucky fan. And Dan started 34th, and by lap 12 he had picked up 10 spots, and that is when the crash occurred, and we have been literally stopped from that moment until now. And all of our attention has been focused now on Dan's condition.
Well, you know, and Dan is always active, guys. He is racing go-karts throughout the season, and I'm at the kart track all the time myself, and you see Dan there. I mean, he loves motor racing. He's just absolutely great aboard a go-kart, and we all started in go-karts, Eddie, and anytime that Dan's not in IndyCar, he's been racing other things. Was off to Australia after this event to do some racing down there, and in the touring car sedan series that's so very popular, and his goal was just to keep on driving and close to a deal for next year. So our thoughts and prayers are for his recovery, that he has the ability to drive again.
And of course he was doing the testing on the new 2012 car.
He did all the he's done all the preparation for that. So the car that we saw run the other day, he had been running. Dan is not one of those persons that you ask a question about racing and you expect you're going to get 2 answers. He's just so enthusiastic about everything. And I've watched his win at the Indy 500 over and over and over again. Just imagine how much hard work went into that to put himself in that position to win that race, and to see him afterwards when he got that cup and the milk, and he was just enthusiasm bubbling everywhere. So we're all sitting here.
You know, and he's a guy that went through the European Series. I mean, he did all the Formula stuff that we've all done, and we've enjoyed it. And the Formula Fords, the Vauxhall Series, and we talked about the karting itself, and started off the IndyCar stuff with Panther Racing. And a talented race driver, understands the marketing and the PR side of it, and certainly has created a brand for himself. And a driver overall that is one of the fan favorites. And, you know, if you ask him a question, like you mentioned, he lights up because he loves the sport.
In 2005, I remember the T-shirt he had made up. Remember, he won the Indianapolis 500, but that's the year Danica led, and she got all the publicity coming out of the race, and he had a T-shirt made up for the next week at the next race saying, hey, I won the Indy 500. And, of course, he went on that year to win the 2005 championship. And right now, we are still waiting as long as we can. We're going to stay here to find out. You'll know when we know exactly the news involving Dan Wheldon and what's going to happen with today's race.